All right, welcome back. It's time for your tropical update. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist John Dawson. Love this opportunity because we really get to dive into things a little bit more and discuss what's going on that I just don't have the time during a normal newscast to do that. And if you've been keeping score at home, you'll know that we had our first named storm in the Atlantic form yesterday. And it was also yesterday when it went away. It was a very quick little blip on the radar, or on the satellite would be more accurate to say. And yeah, really not even able to make it out anymore in the Atlantic. It was a very short-lived Andrea. And so that first name we've been kind of waiting for, able to check that off the list, and we could kind of move on with our next business. And there's not a lot of business right now, as a matter of fact. The Atlantic Basin continues to remain very quiet. It was very unusual to kind of have this storm form right in the middle of the Atlantic. For this time of the year, that's unusual. And again, for it to be such short-lived, but it is pretty close to when we would expect to see that first named storm. If you look at the last 30 years, that first named storm typically forms around June the 20th. So, you know, it was maybe 3 or 4 days off from those averages. But overall, again, that's kind of a quiet start to the season is what's expected. And that's certainly what we've had. And we're going to be a little bit quieter for a while as well. And we're going to dive into some of that in just a moment. I do want to mention, though, over in the Pacific, the Eastern Pacific, that has not been quiet, continuing to show some possibilities for further development. The National Hurricane Center identifying this large area as a possible formation, 80% chance in the next 7 days that could happen. So we don't focus always a whole lot on the eastern side of things, but that's Eastern Pacific, but that's kind of what we were looking for. So as I mentioned, Andrea is the first named storm so far. We've kind of been waiting for that. We could check that one off the list. It was a tropical storm strength. Next name that we'll be looking for is Barry. So Barry's the next name that we're going to be looking for on our list. And again, hopefully we'll sort of slowly progress. We don't need to go through these too quickly. So here's again kind of that interesting developments that I was talking about. In June, typically this is the area where we see tropical storms form. Now, it's not an impact area. It's not like a track where they're going, but it's where they first are created, where they're first form at. This would be the areas that we're looking at. So again, to have something form in the middle of the Atlantic is a bit unusual for that to be taking place. And again, that's something just kind of noting of where we are at the season. So on the topic though of formation, we're already kind of beginning to wrap up June. I know I want to get out of here too quick, but as we start looking ahead to July a little bit more, you'll notice that we start extending out a little bit more some favored areas of development. Again, this is not impacts. This is not a track. This is where they first develop, where they first form, and out into the western portions of the Atlantic, over into the Caribbean, become a little bit more of a spot to watch. And then definitely we've got an area in the Atlantic off of the East Coast, this oranger shading representing a little more likely even to see that. That's certainly an area that's probable for July development. But again, overall, we don't see a lot of development in June or July. And when we look at the history, this goes all the way back to 1851. So we're just plotting what we know of. Obviously, we didn't know about everything happening in 1900, but what we know of keeps those activities fairly low through June and through July. We get into August and things really begin to ramp up. So we won't expect for a lot of development to happening in June or in July, but we'll be watching for a little bit more. Here's something that it's, again, typical, keeps us quiet in the early parts of the season, and that's that very active Saharan dust. When we get into August, this sort of quiets down a little bit. That helps to allow that activity to kick up. So just as normal as we would expect, we've got a lot of Saharan dust out of there. I'm going to show you a future cast now. So moving forward, this is what we'll be watching. And first of all, just note that all across the area that we would expect to see some formations taking thick dust. But also for those of you along the Gulf Coast here, when we get into Monday and Tuesday at the beginning of next week, this dust is going to make it all the way here to the Houston area, to all the Gulf Coast area. So just something to kind of keep in mind as we're starting out in July. We could be having another one of those dusty sort of scenarios that we find ourselves in just a little bit. I just want to take a minute to remind you that my hurricane gear test is a great way to use as a resource to prepare for hurricane season. And this is the time to prepare. When things are quiet, that's when you want to prepare. There's not long lines at the store to buy those non-perishable foods, to pick up on some batteries or something along those lines. And as I always like to remind you, you need to keep certain things around year-round anyway because of the possibility of there being some sort of unexpected emergency, a major sort of displacement of your routines that you're used to. So go to YouTube if you're not already there now. I know sometimes folks like to watch our tropical updates on YouTube, and search for meteorologist John Dawson in the search bar, or you could put in hurricane gear test, either one of those ways. That's going to allow you to find my channel, and you're going to be able to have a playlist there of all the hurricane gear tests. And it's a good opportunity for you to kind of review some things, maybe see some new things, get some fresh ideas, and kind of go through and make sure that you're prepared as we continue through this quieter part of the season. All right, always here every day of hurricane season, giving you the latest on the tropics. That'll do it for today. We'll have more Texas Live and Local coming up after the break.